Welcome back, everybody, from the break. Thank you for joining us for Rocket League. But now we've got some League of Legends action going on. It's going to be the University of Washington versus University of Utah, the Utes, and we are going to be providing you a best of 3 game of the week tonight. And we're going to be headed straight into it in just a moment. It's going to be, my name is Aaron, and I'm going to be your single caster for the night, and I'm hoping to enjoy this game as much as you guys are. And as we are getting into the game, it looks like in the top lane, it is going to be Renekton versus Rengar in the top lane, Skarner versus Ivern in the jungle, Echo versus Orianna in the mid lane, and Kaisa and Rel versus Jhin and Thresh in the bot lane. Now, here's a pretty interesting pick, or quite a couple interesting picks we've got going on the side of the University of Washington, especially in this top side. It's going to be that Rengar top up against the Renekton. Renekton, one of the more traditional blind pick lane bullies that we see in professional play, and no stranger to solo queue as well. Has such a solid lane matchup, especially into those melee bruisers. And I don't think Rengar is going to be an exception unless Zico has something up his sleeve. Rengar definitely one of the more slippery melee champions that we have available in the top lane meta, and not something that we're too used to seeing, but he has the ability to make use of those brushes to try to weave in auto attacks without getting too much traded back onto him. But we'll see who's going to get the better of this top lane matchup as both teams head towards their respective spires. Red team going to secure the bot side for themselves, as the Rel going to move up with Zico and Drago here into the red side invade. Going to be a little bit of a late invade here as they have the sweeper as well, going to secure that spire. Might have tipped off the red team though. Don't see any pings coming through quite just yet. We see Rain on that Renekton is guarding the tri-bush, and he might be running into Zico on this Rengar as soon as this leash finishes off. We might end up seeing some action here. As you can see, Rengar healing off the bush there. The pings are coming through, but it looks like Rain not wanting to take that trade with the Rengar this early into the game. Rengar, once he's able to build that ferocity, even though both of these top laners have the Conqueror, Rengar might be able to get the better of him in that 1v1, especially if he doesn't have that Ruthless Predator leveled. And Rain just going to try to make sure that he has a little bit of lane priority just by heading it into the lane first, getting that first touch on the wave. And having spotted off that information that Rengar was leashing the red in the top side, Riton on this Ivern is going to be headed straight down into the opposing bot and pick up that red debuff for himself. And now we've got a bit of a split map situation going on in this game, and it's going to be the Skarner in the top side and Ivern in the bot, and that's going to mean that Drago is going to be trying to focus his efforts on shutting down this Renekton and really setting up Rengar to take over this game. And while we don't traditionally think of Rengar as that kind of champion to go in and fight those team fights all by himself, he can definitely create a lot of pressure, especially against some of these more immobile backline carries that we have on Utah's side, such as the Orianna and the Jhin. You can see Zico using that passive of his, but now we got to trade in the mid lane as well, as the bomb is going to head straight in, proc that Thunderlord's Decree onto his opponent. It gets the shield a little bit too late though, as Love Yue with that pot running is going to win out in this spot. Has this potion running as well, and for the moment though, it looks like both junglers just going to settle to handshake off their full clears, as Riton on this Ivern going to wait for that Scuttle Crab to spawn and secure that one for himself. But you can see in the top lane, Zico was able to shove that wave into his opponent and get a cheeky ward into that Wraith side of Ivern's jungle. Walk all the way over there without losing very much XP. It's the power of this matchup. Very difficult for champions like Renekton to interact with him unless the Rengar messes up the trade, like he almost did there, but he has the heal to make sure that that goes even for himself. And now we can see Skarner, he's doing the Scuttle Crab in the top side, and he might be eyeing the mid lane here, just like Ivern is eyeing the bot lane, and Achilles tries to get the hook onto the opposing bot lane, but to no avail, and Ivern just going to settle to back up here and see if there's anything left for him in that top side. But don't imagine there is going to be, as now we see Drago moving in onto the mid lane, but not quite going to find anything. Did not land that crystal stun onto the opposing Orianna, and not going to be able to set up that gank for themselves, and that's going to hurt the University of Washington a little bit for the moment, as Echo now down 10 CS over his opponent, and Rain as well though, having a pretty tough time of his own in the top lane, mitigating that solo lane CS deficit. But speaking of CS deficits, you can see Skarner really pulling ahead of the Ivern here, who lost a lot of tempo down there in the bot lane with that botched gank, and even though Skarner had one of his own, he's going to try to make up for it with this top lane dive, as Rain is going to try to go in with that Ruthless Predator, tries to find the heal, but it's only going to be a little bit, but maybe he has enough movement speed to kite out the Skarner here. He has the movement speed and the shield. Drago's going to try to go for it. He follows up with the flash, and that's going to be the first blood going the way of Drago 8 for the University of Washington. A roaring start and really well played from the jungler of University of Washington, spotting that window of tempo that he had from Ivern, having backed in that bot side and taking the opportunity to take advantage of how well CLoL had played that top lane, finding those trades, getting those chunks, and now here's the crash down from Morona as he's going to find Fungal Pants with the stun and tries to get him with the lance as well, but here's the hook onto Kaisa, and it's going to be followed up with that deadly flourish. Fourth shot going to trade out onto Aegon Rector, and University of Utah able to win out in that spot, but Drago 8 on the other side of the map, stealing away the opposing Krugs, and Renekton not so much is able to find a little bit of damage onto him thanks to that crystalline exoskeleton. Skarner, of course, with the heads up to take away the Krugs, knowing that Riton on this Ivern is not going to be taking that camp very often, if at all. Ivern, because of how the champion interacts with the jungle camps, is receiving much less XP and gold than he normally would if he were to take that camp, and is going to be trying to leave that side unattended, and that's part of the reason that this split map setup has been able to work. And now here's a trade from Bamamas Mori. He has the ultimate available to him, but in the top lane as well, Seiko going down very low, but Rain uses that slice and dice to head out of the trade. You can see as soon as Seiko hits level 6, he's fearing for his life, and he's going to accept that Seiko gets plenty of free hits as he goes on the retreat. Renekton continuing to lose out hard in this top lane matchup as he's down nearly 22 CS. Bamamas Mori, though, with a big stun, he has the third hit as well. Has plenty of movement speed, but the shockwave from Love UA is going to try to get him out of here, and thanks to the phase rush, he's able to walk out of that one without expending his flash, but things looking pretty dicey in the soul lanes, and they're only going to get worse as Drago 8 once again looking for this top lane dive. Seiko popping the ult is going to go in. Thrill of the Hunt is going to find the kill for the top laner of the University of Washington, but it's almost going to be traded out down here in the bot lane as University of Utah going down very low, and University of Washington continuing to win all across the map. Big plays being made and huge chunks on the opposing laners, but top lane is where it's becoming advantageous, and here's that top lane setup working out so well for the University of Washington, and Riton getting really outpaced by the Skarner pick so far. Not able to find very much on the other side of the map. He's going to have to accept that the top side is ceded over to the Skarner, but he has been able to find much in the way of bot lane ganks as well, and even though Fungal Pants, he's been able to get himself a 10 CS advantage over his opponent, they're going to need even more if they want to start to win back this gold deficit, which is starting to climb to 2,000 gold at just 7 minutes into this game. And one way that they could get back into it, though, is that the neutral objectives have been largely untouched so far. Of course, the Rift Herald not spawning for about another minute, but see if Ivern decides to eye that dragon, as Drago 8 once again going to steal away the red buff of his opponent, knowing that this top side belongs to him. And Bamamas Mori once again looking for the trade here, is able to get another great stun at maximum range onto Love UA, and he's settling for just the trade there. Going to burn away those potions of his opposing mid laner, and both mid laners trying to win back as much priority as they can. Make sure that they can set their junglers up for success when it comes to the dragons. But I don't think Drago 8 is very concerned about those dragons, as his name might suggest. He's once again eyeballing the top lane, waiting in the tri-bush, and Rain's wave is not looking good for him. It's heading towards the opponent, but it's going to be stuck in a bad spot where he's forced to walk up into the lane if he wants to CS. And now here's the play, as the slow is going to come down onto Rain once again. He has the dominance available, isn't going to provide enough health. He's going to try to use that empowered heal to keep himself alive, but the stun comes through, and once again Drago's 8 is able to pick up the Renekton, but it's finally going to be traded out from Love UA, as 3 members of the University of Utah are able to commit themselves to the play in the mid lane and finally punish Bamamas Mori for these really aggressive trades there in the mid lane. And they might be starting to eyeball the dragon here in just a moment, as they're going to make sure that they shove out this mid wave before moving towards it. Drago 8, knowing that he can't contest 3 members of the opposing team, is just going to settle for the Rift Herald, and settle is a bit of a humble way to put it, as they are winning out hugely in this top lane. Seiko on this Rengar has nearly double the CS, more than double the CS of Rain on this Renekton, and Drago 8 continuing to outpace Riton, not only when it comes to CS, but also when it comes to ganks. Always able to find the opportunities in the top lane, using the trades that Seiko is able to find, as well as the wave manipulation to get Renekton into a bad spot and set his top laner up for success. And it's found themselves 3 plates in the top lane, but maybe Rel has found something down here in the bot lane, as Achilles is going to find the deadly flourish onto Morona, but not going to amount to much here, as Bamamas Mori tries to find the stun onto Riton and Achilles, but they're just going to retreat down there to the bot lane where the Jhin is waiting for them, who is nearly 20 CS up over their opponents. And maybe this bot lane is where University of Utah needs to win out, as once again the Deadly Flare is going to make sure that the ganks don't come through. Vavamas Mori wasting a lot of time down here in the river trying to apply some pressure onto the opposing bot. Keep Eigenrector from falling too far behind, but in the meantime, Love Yue is the one getting plenty of solo experience there in the mid lane, and that's going to continue to cement his CS lead in that lane. That was only getting worse because of that kill that he was able to find with the help of Achilles Heelys and Riton. But as you can see here in the top lane, even though Skarner doesn't have any camps up here in the top, the fruits of his labor are already manifesting as Seiko so much freedom to just leap onto Rain, keep him from walking up towards this wave. Rain knows if he gets in any range near that bush, he's going to get leaped on, and he is not going to be able to trade it back, not only because of how far ahead this Rengar pick is, but because of also the innate healing that his kit provides. It's so difficult for Rain on this Renekton, who is so focused on winning out in those lane trades to get anything going here. As the smite is going to come down, Dragaway has the suppression onto Rain, who tries to pop the Dominus to keep himself alive, has that health steroid, and finally he's able to walk away from the game with his life, and Dragaway going to have to walk away from that one, but he might be trying again as Ivern finally making his way towards the top side. Love Yue, though, with a solo kill potentially, is going to get beat out by the ultimate from Echo as Drago8 joins the battle. Doesn't have his ultimate though, as here's Daisy from Ivern, and now the shield coming out as well. It's going to be very difficult to kill this Orianna, but the root not quite able to connect from Riton, and that's going to mean that Drago8 is able to walk away from that one. And even though he's got a level advantage over the opposing jungler, Love Yue has one over the mid laner. Unfortunately, that 2v2 is able to be averted on both sides, but I think University of Utah was really hoping to capitalize there, especially with how well the trade was going for Love Yue in that 1v1, and unfortunately the root didn't connect, but they'll have more opportunities down the line, and unfortunately they do have an extra dragon to boot as well to make that mid game a little bit easier for themselves. But while that might help out the bot lane, which is going well, Rain is continuing to suffer on this pick that is designed to dominate the lane and really continues to taper off in usefulness as the game moves forward. And it's going to be up to the rest of his team to pick up the slack and really take advantage of how many resources the University of Washington is investing into crushing this top lane matchup. And now Morona in the mid lane is going to try to buy some time for Echo to crash in that wave, and he's just going to find that Ferromancy crash down, but Achilles Heelys with the hook is able to force away the flash of the opposing support. But we were talking about the how University of Utah was winning down there in the bot lane, but suddenly the CS deficit has all but evened out for the AD carries, and with the Dragon coming up soon, that's going to be a big deal, as it's going to mean that University of Washington is potentially going to be able to fight it on even ground, and Rain, even when he's able to find himself what he thinks is an advantageous trade, is only able to get a little bit of damage. As you can see, Rengar has the full Gore Drinker completed, and Rain really trying to salvage together whatever he can in that top lane build. Is now Dragaway going in once again onto Love Yue. He has the Turbo Chem Tank and he has the suppression, but Vavamas Mori doesn't have a lot of health or mana to his name. He tries to get the ultimate to get that damage, but 3 members of University of Utah are joining the fight here. Vavamas Mori with the Ignite is finally going to go down, and now 3 members are fighting at the startup. But here's the Magnet Storm from Morona to try to find a little bit more damage, and Eigenrector with the Killer Instinct is able to turn things around completely, as the Achilles Heelys with the hook is able to get the Kaisa under the turret. And fortunately, the Ivern is able to walk away from that one with not too much follow-up available left on the rest of the University of Washington roster. But they're going to drop the Rift Herald now and set themselves up for the Dragon, which is going to be spawning momentarily. University of Utah a bit late to the rotation here, as finally Fungal Pants makes his way over, and understandably the Killer Instinct makes it a lot easier for the Kais to make it into that fight. But had it been just a little bit earlier from Fungal Pants, maybe they would have turned that one around. But as it stands, they're continuing to lose all around the map, and it's only getting worse as Seiko with that Gore Trigger knows how much potential he has to simply walk straight at the Renekton, not even let him have so much as a sniff at the wave. And Rain has the Conqueror fully stacked, but the Rengar's a little bit stronger, my friend. And that's going to mean that Rain is going to have to continue to cede away all priority in this top lane, as Seiko heading straight towards that Flame Horizon, continuing his path onto double CS pace. It's not something we are at all used to seeing in competitive play, but here it is, folks. The University of Washington playing this split map topside so well and forcing Rain into a corner. University of Utah, top lane isn't their only avenue to victory, and they know it, as they're going to have to try to stake everything on this second dragon here, potentially, unless they decide that this isn't their chance to fight it out. And they're moving up for the vision, but University of Washington have the first move on the map, and that's going to mean that they're able to even out the dragon advantage to just 1-1. University of Utah having to respect how much stronger not only the Skarner is, but even though Echo is 0-2, they still have so much team fight potential, and it's only getting worse for them as Eigenrector, that serrated Dirk completed for himself, is getting a bit of an item spike that, even though Fungal Pants has that Gale Force, is especially winning out for the Kaisa because she's able to get that 80 advantage for her evolved Cathian Rain, and that's going to be so much power in a single target fight, and only going to get even stronger in those extended trades. As Ivern trying to find himself the Raptors in the top side is going to get found out by Dragaway here. Tries to bring in Daisy to help him out, stop the Scorpion from bullying here, but Babamas Mori with the stun is almost able to find the Ivern as Love UA finally joined the battle with the two-man Shockwave, but not a lot of damage available through that Turbo Chem Tank, and with Seiko able to walk all the way through the top lane, they are able to run straight at Daisy and pick themselves up some consolation gold, and Seiko even going even further into the face of Love UA, but the Moonstone Renewer doing so well for Reton, and Rain keeping himself alive with that dominance. Now they're finally finding the kill onto Seiko. It's not quite a shutdown, but it means so much in the topside battles that are going on in this game, and now finally Rain finding himself a little bit of breathing room might get himself an opportunity to safely CS that he's been lacking so much in the top lane. And importantly, Love UA is now finding himself with 3 kills in this game. All 3 of University of Utah's kills are in the pocket of the mid laner, and now he might be looking for more. As Dragaway looking pretty low here, but the flash and the Ruthless Predator from Rain is going to lock Dragaway up, but he has plenty of movement speed on the Skarner with the Scuttle Crab as well. The Crystal and Exoskeleton keeping him healthily alive, and now Eigenrector going in with the Killer Instinct is almost able to find Fungal Pants. Maybe they might do it, but Achilles Heelies is going to be the sacrifice nonetheless as the Deadly Flourish tries to keep the rest of the team at bay, but there are 3 members of the bot lane down there, and while the University of Utah is trying to make the play happen in the top side, University of Washington able to capitalize on the man advantage down in the bot and pick themselves up a kill, at least on the support, and almost finding themselves 2, if not for a well-timed Gale Force from Fungal Pants. He's got 20 CS over the Kaisa. Now Eigenrector's got himself 2 kills to his name, and once he's got the Mythic completed for himself as well, suddenly the tables are really going to turn down here in the bot lane. His first turret going to be picked up in the bot lane of all places, where University of Washington was focusing so much of their efforts on the top side, and it might be starting to taper off a little bit as they're going to be trying to start up the Rift Herald here. As I was going to say, Seiko now only 40 CS above his opponent, as he was about 60 or 70 before, and that's still an absolutely massive amount, but not quite the absolute domination as before, but it's enough to buy the Skarner the space to solo away the Rift Herald here, and force University of Utah to have to settle for trading away the Raptors and the red buff of their opponents, but maybe it won't go so smoothly as the pings are coming down from the University of Washington. The bot lane has rotated. Maybe they're going to try to contest the Ivern and the Thresh here. With the Rift Herald taken, we'll see whether Drago decides to opt to handshake away the opposing camps as well, or if he's going to move in for a flank with that suppression. The Turbo Chem Tank is so deadly for accessing the backline members of the University of Utah composition, but instead it's going to be the Rift Herald being dropped straight down in the mid lane for just a little bit sliver of health. Not able to get that second charge quite just yet, and Dragaway might have pulled the trigger a little bit too early, but I think he really wanted to get rid of that first tier mid lane turret and really set up some of these diving plays that University of Washington have available to them with this composition. So many of these champions designed to go straight in at their opponents, all of them as a matter of fact, and now Dragaway might have bit off a bit more he could choose. He's going to get hit by the box and the hook as well. He's forced to flash away, has plenty of movement speed though, and has the blast plant, but Love UA finds him with the shockwave, and now here's the curtain call. Get one last hit, the shutdown going the way of the Orion, and Babamas Mori betrayed by the blast plant is going to have to get sent into 4 members of the University of Utah. He tries to flash in for a hero play, but Seiko joining him as well, and the mid laner is going to go down, but Eigenrector and Lerona have finally joined the battle. Magnus Storm not quite doing so much here, only finding a couple members as Eigenrector fighting it out and trying to keep Lerona alive, but Seiko was waiting in the wings in the bush. He was able to keep himself alive thanks to that Gore Drinker, but he might have died in a bit too late as now 4 kills going the way of the University of Utah in a horribly botched top lane skirmish. Eigenrector forced to take the blast plant into the opposing base, commit honorable seppuku to join the rest of the members of the University of Washington, and thankfully he's able to walk away with just an execution, but suddenly disaster for the University of Washington. Drago 8 just a bit too out of position and not quite on the same page as the rest of his team when it came to that engage, and that might cost him a little bit of priority here on the Dragon as the deaths are staggered. AD carry not quite able to join them for this Dragon, which is be spawning just right now. Infernal Dragon, coveted by both members, or all members of both teams, and Looks like Drago8, knowing that Eigenrector is going to be spawning in just a few seconds, is not keen on giving this one away, but he's going to be spotted out by the Vision Plant. As Fungal Pants and Achilles Heel is going to move in straight away to start this one up. And now the teleport as well coming in through from the Renekton. He doesn't have a Gore Drinker, but he has Dominus available in just a few seconds. As Achilles Heel tries to find the hook, but Drago8 is going to steal away the Infernal Dragon with the Blast Plant. Smooth Criminals now, Marona going in. Doesn't quite have the Magnet Storm, but the Shockwave not doing so much. A shutdown goes on to the mid laner of the University of Utah, and a big knockup from Daisy is not quite going to do it, as now the rest of the University of Washington is on the rampage. They're going to try to find Fungal Pants. Seiko here is not going to go away anytime soon, as Rain trying to do his best to delay the rest of the members of the University of Washington from joining the rest of his team, but Seiko is a one-man army, and Fungal Pants and Ivern cannot do anything to get away from this Rengar. Finally, he is joining the battle, and finally University of Washington doing their best to pick up the ace and cementing themselves a 7,000 gold advantage, all starting with the steal of the Infernal Dragon by Drago8. And while University of Utah, they might have had themselves a bit of a lucky spot in the topside skirmish earlier, suddenly University of Washington completely turning things around, where that top lane skirmish was really fragmented and really just not a lot of communication patching things together. Suddenly they're really bringing it all for this coalesced team fight and really bringing it together to take down Love UA, the real main damage threat of this team, and run over the rest of the team as the Shockwave is no longer available. And really well played from the University of Washington, knowing their strengths and playing to them. And Rain put up a venerable effort there, trying to 1v3 in the backline, but this Rengar with the Gore Drinker is just so powerful, and he's only going to get even stronger with how much gold he picked up in that last fight. You can see, not only does he have the components for that Sterix Gauge, he's got himself a Serrated Dirk as well to provide himself even more damage. That's the power of this pick, and with the Gore Drinker as well, not only is he able to do so much damage to the backline of Love UA and Fungal Pants, he's also got so much healing as well, in addition to the tankiness from and health from Sterix Gauge and Gore Drinker. But even when you think you've almost got him, he's got that empowered roar, and he's got the healing from the Gore Drinker as well to keep himself alive. And it's going to be so difficult for the University of Utah to deal with, not only in this moment, but even as they don't have any heal reduction available to them. Their pockets all across the board have been so stunted, and they can't quite afford the 800 gold purchase quite just yet, as they really need to get these key items going. As Achilles Healy's able to spot out University of Washington trying to find something on the Baron Nashor. And while it isn't quite a Baron take quite just yet, you can see the jungler of the University of Washington, Drago8, he's been putting on a standout performance in this game one. He's found himself nearly 50 CS over his opponent, doing absolutely fantastic on this Skarner pick that is generally thought of as unorthodox, but he's been able to use it to such great effect to run straight at his opponents with how much tankiness and movement speed he has available to him. And while I was talking about that Sterix Gauge, it looks like it's going to be the Serpent's Fang instead for Seiko in the top lane. I really like this purchase. It's one of the most underrated items in the game, but so many shields are available on the side of University of Utah. You've got Thresh's Lantern, the Command Protect from Orianna, and the shield, the Trigger Seed from the Ivern, as well as the Locket of the Iron Solari. So many shields available on the side of University of Utah, and Rengar with the Serpent's Fang is not only going to be doing extra damage to those shields, but also even when there's just a little bit of that shield left, he's still gaining that bonus damage, and he's going to try to use it down there in the bot lane, but not quite able to find anything more than Flash from the Orianna. But that's enough that University of Washington needs to try to find the play in the mid lane, as Drago8 going in with that Turbo Chem Tank. He tries to find the suppression onto the opposing AD carry, but Verona trying to join the battle as well with that Magnet Storm. He's able to get the stun onto two members, but finally the Orianna joining the battle with the Shockwave, and now Verona is stranded from the rest of his team. Eigenrector not quite able to join the battle and get some damage going. The Renekton picking up both of those kills in the mid lane. Once again, Drago8 jumping the gun a little bit on those engages, and that's going to give a window for University of Utah to try to start up Baron Nashor, but we'll see if Seiko's able to stop them. And he might get found out here by that Ruthless Predator. He goes down very low, but here's that healing we were talking about. His range is going in. He doesn't have the dominant spell with him, but he's not even going to need it, as Seiko and Eigenrector getting shredded by the combined efforts of the University of Utah. They are really starting to come together and play as a team here, and that is the power of this Ivern pick in conjunction with how much shielding power there is available. The Serpent's Fang is a strong pick, but he's the only one with it. And besides that, just only the Executioner's Calling on Eigenrector is what's stopping the Moonstone Renewer healing on Riton. He might find himself 50 CS down over the opposing jungler, but this this singular item is all he needs to keep the health bars of the rest of his teammates topped off and keep them going in these fights, keep them the moxie that they need to run straight at this absolutely fearsome Lion in the top lane and demolish him even in the face of Eigenrector, who's looking so powerful with the Collector completed as well as the Gale Force. Even has the Executioner's Calling to try to get things going, but now suddenly the tables have completely turned, and what looked like a fluke fight in the top side for University of Utah has snowballed into Baron Nashor and an even out kill score for them that they're going to try to convert into an Infernal Dragon and try to stop the lead that the University of Washington have going on right now, right here. But Drago 8, he had the steal before, and he's going to try to find it out again as Rain going to get spotted by that Thrill of the Hunt, and now suddenly a huge Magnet Storm! Ringer going to join the battle as well, so Bomb is more stunned from that parallel convergence. It's all going completely wrong for the University of Utah. Every single spell coming together to absolutely decimate the red team. University of Utah walking straight into the clutches of the Flash Engage from Morona, setting up the entire rest of the team for success. Everything came together in that moment. 5-man Gore Drinker, 5-man Stun, 5-man parallel convergence into the ultimate from Babamas Mori, and University of Utah don't get so much as a chance to react. Moonstone Renewer not meaning so much as anything if the entire team gets deleted in a matter of moments, and to boot, they're going to get the Infernal targets for themselves and bear down the base of their opponents, who just a moment ago had picked up the Baron Nashor. University of Washington, even when it looks like University of Utah had something going for themselves, thanks to some missed coordination on their opposing team, University of Washington are able to bring it together, start that teamwork up, and it all comes together beautifully in that team fight down there at the Dragon. And University of Utah not so much as picking up a return kill to trade things out, and now suddenly having lost all of their Baron Nashor buffs, all those stats and all those empowered minions completely gone, it looks like as long as University of Washington are able to bring it to that straight up 5v5 teammate, it's going to spell absolute disaster if these two teams meet in the battlefield again, and they're really going to have to reassess the battle lines here. All of their fights so far had started out with straggle kills from the opposing team. Drago 8 finding himself a bit too far forward in enemy territory, and they're really going to have to count on that if they want to find another miracle. But if they bring it to another dragon fight like that, it's only going to spell disaster and potentially spell their nexus blowing up. As fortunately for them, University of Washington only able to find the turret take in the mid lane, in addition to that Infernal Dragon, but they still did get themselves those permanent stats from that neutral objective, and if those fights looked hard before, they're only going to get even worse for the University of Utah, as the item completion's really looking stunted here. Fungal Panties, he is able to find the Collector, but in the meantime, Eigenrector well on his way towards that Nashor's Tooth, and the only one who's really got anything going as far as the gold department goes is the Orianna, and now a hook going on to Babamas. An immediate jump out with that ultimate is able to secure his life, and two members of University of Utah, two of the most important members I might add, are devoting their efforts to try to find this top lane turret, and that's going to leave just Riton, Fungal Pants, and Rain down here in the bot lane to try to defend the base, and Drago 8 has so much impunity to walk straight at the inhibitor and start beating it with his meaty Scorpion Claws, as now once again a huge Magnet Storm finds three members of the University of Utah. From Morona without even the flash is going to mean that Fungal Pants is going to get locked up by the suppression from Drago 8. Rain, Riton, and Achilles Healy only able to watch it for as their AD carry gets dragged away by the Crystal Scorpion, and Rain going to try to re-engage to avenge the AD carry's life as the LPUA joining the battle. Does not shockwaves quite just yet, but he's already used it, and now a 1-for-1 following up the kill onto Fungal Pants. Another great hook from Achilles Healy is able to find Morona, but Seago once again just so tanky, and that's going to mean that Babamas Mori is able to walk straight out of the opposing support, and he thought he had a catch onto the opposing onto the Rel, but Love UA is now stranded down here in the bot lane inhibitor turret. He tries to flash away, but to no avail as the Acathian Rain able to find the kill, and it's Anya's Hourglass from Babamas Mori is going to mean that the mid lane is going to keep himself alive as well for this last push. University of Washington able to pick up one mid lane inhibitor. It looks like they're going for the health bars are pretty low. It's just Riton and Fungal Pants left on this map, and they've got quite a bit of a window as Love UA is not quite respawned yet. Seiko full HP thanks to that Gore Drinker is going to mean that the University of Washington is able to find the bot lane inhibitor to boot, and that's going to make things so much harder when Baron Nashor spawns in just a few moments. Seiko 7, 3, and 10 on this Rengar pick. This is the power of these niche picks that generally just don't see that much play in other competitive avenues. It's these players in the collegiate scene for CLoL that are able to bring out that special sauce and really turn things around on their opponents who are not prepared for strategies like these. Drago8 as well on this Skarner. It's not something that you prepare for, and that's an advantage in itself. And it seems like University of Utah really have to try to figure out some kind of counterplay to this strategy of University of Washington. And as simple as it sounds, run straight at your opponents and decimate the backline before they get a chance to react. It seems like there's just no chance University of Utah have to react, and that's all thanks to Morona's engages on this rel. That Magnet Storm always locking up so many members of the opposing team and completely decimating the battle lines that they've so carefully drawn. And University of Utah can have to space themselves out so much more carefully to prevent the likes of the Rengar and the Skarner from popping that Turbo Chem Tank, from popping that Thrill of the Hunt, and diving Fungal Pants before he gets a chance to be that main DPS threat that University of Utah need. But the Dragon is spawning in just a few seconds here, and University of Washington are the only ones in that bot side river. And it looks like in all the past Dragon fights, University of Utah have finally learned that they don't stand a chance when it comes to those Dragon fights. So they're trying to win the Baron here, but University of Washington not wanting to give them so much as an inch, as they're going to immediately peel off that Infernal Dragon, which is going to mark the soul for the blue team, and try to scare off University of Utah from that Baron. And fortunately, just by posturing 3 members of the team into the top side, that's going to mean that 2 members of University of Washington are able to secure the Infernal Soul without so much as a gunshot from University of Utah. University of Washington are now trying to find out Love UA, but it's only Seiko here in the top lane. He got a bit off a bit more than he can chew. You can't quite 1v5 just yet, Rengar, even with that Chempunk Chainsword. And the Shockwave is expended, but that's going to mean the shutdown going the way of University of Utah. But University of Washington are completely unscathed. Unscathed. It looks like they're going to head straight for the Baron Nashor as if they had never lost that top laner. And the curtain call comes out as well to try to get some damage onto the Rel. But Riton gets absolutely blown up by the Mamas Mori on this Echo. Morana once again looking for the Magnet Storm. Finds Achilles Heelies as Aegon Rector goes in with the Killer Instinct to find out the opposing AD carry. And Achilles Heelies is able to trade out the kill onto Morana with that Ignite. But that's all it's going to amount to is Drago8 now cleaning it up onto Love UA. Finds the stun, has the Infernal Soul. Aegon Rector going to walk a bit too close to the ball there, but fortunately Babamis Mori is there, and it was a bit of a sloppier fight than University of Washington I imagine were hoping for, but they are able to find 4 kills in exchange for 3, and once again return their attention towards Baron Nashor. And with percent health of Babamis Mori and the Cinder Hulk from Drago8, they're going to be killing this one very shortly. No one alive on University of Utah there to stop them, and they were up about 10,000 gold before, but now they're only up about 8,000, which is going to get even bigger once the Baron Nashor gets taken. But importantly, the Infernal Soul continuing to make these fights such a living nightmare for the University of Utah, but it's not entirely bleak. You saw there in that fight, it was only a 3 for 4, even when the Renekton had to stay in base and clear out those waves, as University of Washington delaying for just a little bit to give even more members of the team that Baron Nashor buff. But like I was saying, a bit of a bright spot for the University of Utah if they want to get back in this game. University of Washington, even though they're playing really well, they're not playing flawlessly, and they're continuing to make mishaps when it comes to these engages. Seiko trying to 1v4 there in the top lane before the other members were there to join him, and that was able to set University of Utah up to try to start things in their favor with that shutdown in that pick. But as well, when it was in that 4v5 or 4v4 situation around the Baron Nashor, University of Utah was almost able to make things even in the face of the Infernal Soul, and maybe with just a little bit tighter execution, University of Utah could turn the tables on University of Washington when it comes to these 5v5 team fights that they have drafted their composition for so perfectly. Every single member designed to dive straight in onto the University of Utah, completely disrupt their game plan of letting Orianna and letting Jhin sit back in the back while the Moonstone Renewer keeps the front line topped off. And now, teamfight's going to take a little bit of a different turn as University of Utah corralled inside their base, doing all they can just to try to keep the Baron-powered minions at bay. But University of Washington are bearing down at all gates, and going for this top inhibitor as well as Rain having to face off against this Rengar. It had been the story of the early game, and now we'll see how it turns out in the late game. Seiko winning out big in a couple love taps that looked like for that Rengar. The coming down Chainsword going to mean that the healing from the Renekton not going to amount to anything, and Seiko all by his lonesome, forcing out the Renekton's able to pick up that bot lane inhibitor. Is now Universe. Magnet Storm Jin walking a bit too far forward, is going to get locked up, and now Verona able to lock up the bot lane, but Aegon Rector cutting out so beautifully, even in the face of the Ignite, able to keep himself alive just a little bit longer, but now it looks like University of Washington are just going to end this game out as the Echo and the Skarner are on the Nexus. University of Utah just trying to find those kills wherever they can, and finally University of Washington going to get that last tap onto the opposing Nexus and close out a slugfest of a game that, even with how many spots there were for University of Utah to come back, University of Washington showing that they are always in full control in that game. And that's going to bring them to a 1-0 status in this best of 3 series. University of Washington really bringing it out with those 2 unorthodox picks in the form of the Rengar and the Skarner. And they showed up so huge in that game 1. As well as the Rel, who has only just recently come out, but is quickly cementing herself as one of the most powerful engaged supports, especially in this kind of composition where you've got the Killer Instinct, you've got Echo's Dash, you've got the Turbo Chem Tank from Skarner, you've got the Thrill of the Hunt. Every single tool on this University of Washington composition is designed to completely steamroll the opposing team, and steamroll they did when they were able to bring it together in those coordinated team fights. There were a few hiccups, not as clean as they would have hoped, but University of Washington always on top of when it came to those neutral objectives, always on top of it when it came to those rotations, and all that amounting to a game 1 victory. And now we're going to, in just a few moments, we are going to be headed into the game 2, where we'll see if University of Washington are going to keep it up, try to keep their opponents on their toes with these picks that the University of Utah might not be used to seeing, just not able to respond to in a coordinated manner. Or maybe University of Utah is going to have something under their sleeve, as here we are in game 2. The composition is going to come through. Seiko this time on the Renekton, going to shirk off the Rengar, as Rain is going to meet him in turn with the Gragas. Drago 8 once again on his trademark Skarner, and Riton this time going to turn things around, not take the supportive role, but try to meet Drago in the front lines on this Hecarim. And now Vavamis Mori on the Sylas, once again this AP assassin fighter style champion, and Love Yue once again going to take the role of one of the main carries of his team by picking up the Kassadin instead. Not quite the control mage that he played in game 1, but nonetheless a very powerful scaling pick that is going to cement itself as one of the win conditions for this red team. And in the bot lane, it's going to be Aegon Rector once again on the Kaisa, this time Morona on the Thresh, and now Fungal Pants finding himself on the Aphelios, and Achilles Heelys on another hook champion in the form of the Nautilus. This time University of Washington, they don't quite have that super hard engage that they had enjoyed in game 1. It was the Rel who really set things up for the Skarner and the Rengar to completely pave their way through the backline, and this time they've got the Thresh instead, and it's a bit more of a supportive pick, but nonetheless able to set their team up for success when it comes to those hooks. But Achilles Heelys, no stranger to hooks himself, having played the Thresh in game 1, is going to find himself on the Nautilus now, and maybe providing a little bit more peel than he had in game 1 with how much crowd control Nautilus has available in his kit. And it looks like University of Utah really hard committing to this kind of late game turtling out style, where they're going to wait for these 2 hyper carries in the form of the Aphelios and the Orianna to come online, as it's actually going to be Rain role swapping alongside Seiko. The mid laners making their way over to the top lane, the top laners making their way over to the mid lane, and now we've got a Gragas mid versus a Renekton mid, and actually not too unorthodox, is Rain making a lot of damage happen with those body slam auto attacks. That's the power of Gragas in the solo lanes. He's able to completely prevent the opposing melee champion from interacting with him thanks to the knockback and the stun, but unfortunately Seiko with a bit more pushing power is able to get that level early, just like Vavamis Mori is against the Kassadin, and because of that, University of Washington once again able to cement their power in these solo lanes and force University of Utah to have to see it back a little bit more space. But once level 2 is available again, Rain feeling comfortable to walk straight at Seiko with that Drunken Rage and maybe set him up for a body slam auto attack if he walks a bit too close. There it is again. That's that trading pattern that we're going to be looking out for, and it's what makes Gragas such a difficult opposing laner to deal with. He has so much durability, and it's so difficult to interact with him in those trades, especially as a melee champion, but fortunately he is able to pick up the cannon minion as Rain is forced to miss out on his, and that Drunken Rage, not only providing damage reduction, but also the healing from the passive, going to outmatch that of the Renekton. It's so difficult, I can imagine, for Seiko, but nothing too infuriating, as it isn't as if the Renekton is losing a lot of pressure, rather he's actually 10 CS over his opponent. And he even has the impunity to walk straight at Rain under his turret and try to look for this dive. There it is, the Ruthless Predator. He tries to go in, but forces out the flash of the opposing mid lane, but he might have bit off a bit more he can chew as he's forced to use the flash dice to fortunately get away from turret range, and both mid laners expending summoner spells, but Seiko keeping his flash around and calling Drago over to maybe look for this kill, but Riton's there as well. Try to make sure that this dive doesn't happen. Gragas might be annoying, but Renekton is a very powerful lane bully in his own right, and that's going to mean that 12 CS advantage is going to be sustained as Achilles goes in with the dredge line onto Morona, finds the root as well, but the hook is going to go down, and now the ignite with the passive from Agenrect is going to do a lot of damage to the opposing support and mean that University of Washington going to win out in that bot lane trade, but bot wave going to get crashed into them. Both junglers in the top side going to mean that this bot lane is looking a bit quiet for now, and Rain fortunately able to make his way back to the base after that nearly dreadful dive, and find himself the Tear of the Goddess to continue to spam these spells and force the Renekton back into his lane. Usually it's the Renekton bullying the melee champions, but Gragas, with how much wave clear and how much sustain that he has available to him, is going to mean that he has a bit more of a favorable matchup than most melee champions would, and because of that, he's able to get those Drunken Rage body slam trades onto his opponent, but nonetheless, plenty of wave clear available on the Renekton as well, but he takes a turret shot there, and mid lane continuing to look very volatile. Top lane, you might expect, Kassadin, not one of the strongest laners available in League of Legends, but in this AP matchup against the Sylas, he does have his passive and he does have that magic damage shield to keep himself alive and keep his health bar topped off, and both junglers not finding too much action in these solo lanes as they had been before. It looks like University of Utah have wised up to Drago's top lane ganking ways and not splitting the map this time around. They need to keep Love UA in as even of a matchup as possible so we can continue to scale astronomically past any member of the University of Washington. And that's really going to be their win condition for this game. It's going to be the Hecarim and the Gragas continuing to create space in the early and mid game, and then Kassadin and Aphelios turning things around and being the team fight core that they need in the late game. But for the moment, University of Washington taking advantage of the window that they have to pick themselves up an early dragon uncontested by the Hecarim. Rain forced into the mid lane turret is unable to follow up on that neutral objective, and that's the power of the lane priority that Renekton is able to provide. While he might not scale so well into the mid and late game, he does provide unmatched early game priority, and that's what's going to provide Drago 8 the opportunity to pick up that early dragon. And Riton this time around isn't quite playing something as dainty as the Ivern. He's going to go in with the devastating charge onto Morona, procs the phase rush, but here's a 3v3 we've got going on. So teleport is going to come down, hook on. That Riton is all by himself as Lamas Mori is able to find the ultimate onto the Aphelios, hits the stun onto the Nautilus as well, that Absond abduct, maybe meaning that the rest of University of Washington is going to look for more. They have 5 members down here in the bot lane. Finally, the teleport coming down from the castle, but might not amount to too much. It's only level 6. Achilles flashes in for this root onto the Skarner, but now 5 members of University of Washington have joined the battle, and it's a massacre for the University of Utah. They were not expecting every single member of the University of Washington to meet them in that tri-bush, and they overextend themselves a bit too far trying to flash in for that counter-engage, and they're going to get punished heavily for it as Agenrector, the big carry on Kai'Sa, going to find himself 3-0-1 at just 6 minutes into this game. A horrible dive for the University of Utah, but a really well-coordinated play following up on the success that they found thanks to that hook onto the Hecarim down there, where Riton thought he found himself an opportunity with that devastating charge, and suddenly things were looking real bad in game 1 with how bad the Renekton was doing, but at least University of Utah had a bright spot in the bot lane in game 1, but now suddenly all members of the map losing hard as every single member of University of Washington winning out big in that bot lane play, and you can see Babamis Mori on that Sylas is letting him know that he picked up some big gold down there in the bot lane, and even at just 1-0-1, the Corrupting Pod and the Dark Steel, it's so hard to deal with, especially as Kassadin. And for the moment, University of Utah, while it's not going to shake them from keeping up that bot lane priority, it's going to mean that suddenly all of these lanes have to play so much more careful. It's not as if they were trying to force things in the early game, and that's what really makes me wonder why they wanted to go in so badly on the engage that Riton found down there. But he's going to find another one up here in the top lane as he goes in with the Onslaught of Shadows, and Vomosmore tries to steal it away to use that gap close to get away from this one. Forces he's able to walk away with just 1 HP, but the Flash Rip Walk from the Kassadin is able to return that kill out, but Drago8 there with the suppression. Flash expended is able to trade it out 1-for-1 in the top lane, and Riton fortunately able to find himself at least 1 kill, but still Drago8 1-0-3 in this jungle matchup, and always in the right spot at the right time in these early games. Is now the explosive cast from Rain going to try to keep himself alive for just a little bit longer and finds the opportunity to use that body slam to walk away from this gank from Morona. But every single lane for the moment in the University of Washington fighting with so much priorities. Before, Fungal Pants was threatening Kaisa, who's a bit weaker of a laner thanks to the power of the Nautilus, but suddenly the CS lead is starting to taper out as the Noon Quiver and the Serrated Dirt completed for Eigenrector on this Kaisa, and just the Berserker's Greaves available to Fungal Pants. There are so many more combat stats on the side of the University of Washington down there in the bot lane, and even though the University of Utah know it, continuing to bear down here in the bot lane, sending these waves into the turrets, knowing that the Skarner was up there in the top side, counter-engaging on Riton's play, and maybe that's going to mean that Riton is going to try to find something down there in the bot lane once again, as Seiko popping the Ghost onto the Gragas as he's using the Drunken Rage to keep himself alive. Renekton not doing so much damage to the Batman, but here's Riton, and now the Body Slam going to lock up Seiko for just a moment as the devastating charge sends him into the river. Riton, though, doesn't have a lot of damage to his name, has the Phage and the Sheen at least, and Seiko is able to has to flash out to respect it. Drago8 there to bodyguard his mid laner for just a little bit longer, and if Riton had the Onslaught of Shadows, that might have spelled death, but he had expended it earlier in the top lane, and unfortunately that's going to mean for University of Washington that nothing too bad happens out of that aggressive mid lane trade, and in fact they're able to convert out of it as Renekton using his wave clear to send that wave into the opposing turret and force Riton to have to collect it, lest the Gragas stick around and threaten yet another dive from this Renekton Skarner duo, and Riton not too upset about taking this gold for himself. Hecarim, of course, going to continue to scale fairly well with how much damage he's able to provide and how much tankiness as well if he opts for that sort of build. And speaking of tankiness, Rain is going to be opting for the tank Gragas build this time around, even though he is in the mid lane, has the Bramble Vest, and looks like he's going to be opting for something like one of the tank mythics, either the Frostfire Gauntlet or the Turbo Chem tank, and he's using that Bramble Vest to great effect, really mitigating a lot of the healing that Renekton wants out of those trades. But for the moment, it's not enough to win back the priority here in the mid lane, and of course, the Dragon once again going to go the way of the University of Washington, now finding themselves 2-0 in the neutral objectives, and Seiko with that slice and dice, you can see he's not looking for trades onto the Gragas here. He knows they're going to get by that passive healing, and all he wants to do is shove the wave in as much as possible and buy some priority for his own laners. And Riton, even though the dragon had gone down in that bot side, he's going to try to steal away those top side camps, but Drago8 knows it. He's going to go for this bot lane turret instead, proccing the Rift Herald as the turret goes down to about 2 planings, making sure they get the maximum value out of this charge. And with 2 members of the bot lane of University of Utah rotating over towards the mid lane, it looks like this is going to turn into a second charge in favor of the University of Washington. Might not be much more than that, though, as once again, University of Utah on the back foot here in this early game. Only about 2,000 gold down, though. Looking pretty similar to the state of the game as it was in Game 1, but this time they have a bit more late-game insurance. Of course, Aphelios, one of the most powerful late-game carries, and able to do so much more in team fights than the likes of a Jhin, but Jhin, of course, was no scaler to sniff at in Game 1, and it was so difficult for him to try to find the opportunities that he needed to deal the damage in those fights, thanks to the University of Washington's composition. And this time around, they've got something pretty similar, but without as much straight-up hard engage, and they're going to have to get a bit more creative with how they decide to play these fights as it was in Game 1, but they've got a lot more room to work with thanks to Eigenrector on this Kaisa, who picked up so many of those kills in that early game skirmish and is going to find himself with a Gale Force completed at just 12 minutes into this game. to the mere Berserker Greaves and Pickaxe of the opposing AD carry, and that's going to mean that he's able to walk straight at the opposing mid lane turret with the help of his Thresh, and able to pick himself even more gold in the form of those platings, and Skarner always floating around his main carry there, down there in the bot lane, and making sure that Kai'Sa has all the space that she needs, not only to secure those waves, but secure those platings. And fortunately for the University of Utah, that's only going to last for about a minute more, but they're not getting very much gold anywhere else, and the gold lane only continues to climb for the University of Washington. Fortunately, though, Gragas is about 20 CS down against his opponent. Love trying to make up for it for himself as he's got 20 CS in what should be a less favorable lane matchup, as now he's going to get suppressed and locked up by this Skarner. Looks like there is no hope for escape from the Crystal Scorpion as Bombas Mori picks up the kill onto the opposing mid laner. He might have been 20 CS down, but now he is a 1 kill up, excuse me, over his opponent as Kestra and Love was really winning out in the early game of Game 1, but now finds himself with 3 of his team's deaths, and really suffering. University of Washington exploiting the early game of the Kestra, really trying to shut him down before he can become that late game monster with that Rift Walk as soon as he hits level 16. The University of Washington know their opponent's win condition. They're playing beautifully to counteract it, using every bit of their efforts there in the top lane to shut down the Kestra, who thought he had himself an island to farm it out against the AP champion in the form of the Sylas, but now finds himself really struggling. And Sylas, who's got the mythic completed for himself in the form of the Everfrost. It's an item that we're not too used to seeing, but it is something that a lot of some of those melee AP champions decide to opt for. It's got a lot by the way of gold value, providing not only health and mana and cooldown reduction as well as the AP, but it's also got a very useful active ability that roots any opponents that get locked up by its Frost Ray, and that's going to be really helpful for the Sylas, who wants to help landing that Epson Abduct. And once again, Love walking a bit too far forward in this top lane, and there it is, the Everfrost locking him, sealing his fate as Bombas Mori picking up yet another kill against the opposing Kestra, and 3 members of the University of Washington committing to that play as they had before, but University of Utah not able to react to it as they try to find some damage onto the opposing mid lane turret, but that is not quite recompense. As now, Renekton might go in with the slicing dice and finds the flash onto the opposing AD carry. Flash just comes a bit too late to save the life of the AD carries. Now the rest of the team on the retreat. Hecarim walking towards that mid lane turret. Unfortunately, University of Washington looks like they won't find much more besides a hook onto the opposing support. The Nautilus is going to go down with a beautiful hook from the Thresh, and now Rain trying to join the battle with the Dark Passage. Renekton going a bit too far forward against the Hecarim. Looks like University of Washington donating a kill to make up for how absolutely nasty Morona is playing on the supports today. The hooks, the engages from Rel, everything is coming together for the University of Washington to get themselves a big 5,000 gold advantage in this early game. Just 15 minutes, and now they're going to be breaking down the very last out. Thanks to Eigenrector, all 3 outer turrets have been demolished, and University of Utah have very little to work with by way of space, and that's gonna mean so much for this 3rd dragon, as Skarner's able to straight up start it on spawn all by himself, not even needing so much as a leash, as Riton knows that he can't fight back against even the tank Skarner. Has to focus on trying to find gold wherever he can, because these camps are not going to stay around here for long. Suddenly, so much of University of Utah's jungle is now the territory of the University of Washington. Mountain Soul on the way for the University of Washington. 3 dragons to 0, and it is going to spell doom if they can get the 4th. For University of Utah, Skarner going to be absolutely unkillable, not to mention the disparate resistances on the rest of the team. I'm thinking of the Thresh and the Skarner, as well as the Renekton if he decides to opt for it. Looks like he doesn't need those resistances, though, as he's going for the Serrated Dirk, as a matter of fact. Maybe going for that Serpent's Fang again, we'll see. But for the moment, University of Washington trying to cement their lead with a Rift Herald to this carries. Morona finally going to get picked up by Love You. A Fungal Pan's going to be traded out for the University of Washington thanks to Drago 8. But the Bombas Mori finds a big Riptide, but it's not going to be that too much more as he isn't able to find the kill onto the Nautilus. As Riton re-engaging with the devastating charge, forces out the flash from the Skarner, and it looks like they're trying to re-engage with the Rift Walk, but with Eigenrector here, a huge explosive cast is going to send Drago 8 back into the mix of things, and Rain able to pick up that kill thanks to the damage from Love You, and University of Washington staking everything on that 2nd Rift Herald where they really didn't need to, and it's going to cost them a lot as they're only able to find 1 kill in exchange for 3, but Eigenrector and Seiko They're very strong in their own right, and they're going to try to contest this Rift Herald. And looks like University of Utah knows how absolutely devastating these two can be. Gale Force completed 4-0-3, nearly a full collector for Aegon Rector, and the serrated Dirk as well as the Blade of the Ruined King on Seiko means that two members of University of Washington, not even the jungler, are all it takes to pick up that second Rift Herald, even if it did mean handing over 3 kills to the University of Utah. A few important shutdowns as well. They were almost able to find some kills in exchange for it. Once again, Fungal Pants really suffering in the backline. That's the power of this Skarner pick, and it's really throwing a wrench in the game plan, not only here in Game 2 for the University of Utah, but also in Game 1. Fungal Pants was just never able to find an opportunity to deal the damage that he needed with an angry Scorpion running straight at him with his Stinger, and looks like University of Utah, they're not trying to prioritize peeling for the AD carry so much as trying to even out the rest of the fight. As University of Washington is being more or less distracted by the Aphelios, but here's Seiko trying to find a kill onto the Kestra before he rips himself, and he might be able to find it as Seiko almost just a little bit more damage, but no summoner spells available to him after popping that Ghost. Unfortunately, Love UA nearly dying in that 1v1, but Riton joining with the Onslaught of Shadows is going to mean they're able to pick themselves yet another kill. Another pick for themselves to get them to try to even out this gold lead just a little bit. Before it was about 5,000 gold, now it's maybe 4,000, but still a lot to work with for the University of Washington, a lot to come back from as the University of Utah. Things more or less going how they might expect, I can't imagine. With a composition like this, I can't imagine they were thinking of winning too hard in these mid-game team fights, and for that I can imagine that being only 3 kills down is almost to their delight, but it's still going to be so difficult to work with the Mountain Soul threatened in just 2 minutes for the University of Washington. If that neutral objective goes over to the opposing team, it will really spell lights out. Love UA and Fungal Pants not able to find those key damage opportunities. Love UA not going to be able to burst down those key members like Aegon Rector thanks to the shield and those empowered resistances. And looks like University of Washington know it. They're going to try to tone things down, not look for those really messy fights as they had been earlier. Try to keep the picks to a minimum. Handed over to the University of Utah, and if they can just wait it out for that minute timer and make it over to the Mountain Soul, only going to be a matter of time before they win out in this game. And University of Utah really on the clock here, trying to find whatever item completions they can before that neutral objective spawns. Somewhere on the way we can see Riton scraping together the pieces of a Sterex Gauge, but I don't imagine it's going to be there in time as the Dragon is again on that minute timer. Finally, the Turbo Chem Tank, though, going to be completed for Gragas, setting them up for the counter hard engage for University of Utah, and it looks like that's all they're going to have to work with at just 20 minutes into this game. Such a dreadfully early Mountain Soul, orchestrated so well by the efforts of University of Android on this Skarner, really bringing the pivotal fight of this game into a window where University of Utah are just not comfortable to fight around, but they are going to have to fight it regardless. It's Love UA here in the top lane, trying to delay the Rift Herald and distract him for just a little bit, just enough time to have to delay that recall timer. He actually cancels it. Might be a mistake here. He has the teleport available at least, but now the hilt goes on to Achilles Heelies, who uses that Dredgeline, or who uses that Riptide onto the opponents, and now in the backline from Lamas Mori trying to find out Fungal Pants, but Sophilia's a bit too hard to deal with as 2 members of the University of Utah going down, and finally the South's going to go down in the backline, but the Castle once again getting locked up by the hook as Aegon Rector has so much freedom to run over every single member of the University of Utah. Fungal Pants the only one able to walk away from this one, and University of Utah turning things around on their opponents, and finally Seiko going to find the kill onto the AD carry. University of big in the team fight, starting out with another brilliant hook from Marona, followed up by once again another Marona playing so well tonight in this matchup against the University of Utah, and going to secure the Mountain Soul for the University of Washington. And Fungal Pants, even when he has what he thinks is space to fight, only the Silas in his face stopping him, but that's going to mean that Rain and Riton there in the front line trying to fight it out against the likes of Aegon Rector, who is looking absolutely massive at this stage of the game, are going to get absolutely melted in return. There's nowhere in these fights that University of Utah can find an advantageous window unless University of Washington decide to mess up, but the margin of error is absolutely closing shut here as now they pick themselves up a 22-minute Mountain Soul. permanent shields, permanent resistances, permanent disaster for the University of Utah, who now trying to fight for that topside vision. Those things are only going to get worse if the Baron Nashor goes the way of their opponents. It's going to mean that much. It's going to be that much more difficult to try to resist their push opportunities. And look at that! Even the poke from those empowered auto attacks of Fungal Pants with those glaives are going to amount to nothing in the face of the shield of the Skarner, and Rain is only able to try to find some damage onto this bot lane turret, not so much as find the entire turret itself, and that might spell bad news for the University of Utah if the University of Washington were to suddenly engage on them right now. But fortunately, the Style's going to be called down there to stop the Gragas as well. It looks like University of Washington, even if this bot lane turret doesn't mean anything, they're just going to want to stop Rain from having his free reign over this game. But double explosive cast from the Stylus and the Gragas is going to really mix things up. And now the hook once again from Achilles Helios, or onto Achilles Helios, excuse me, from Morona. A Reton going to be the one to get caught up by that stinger of the Skarner, and the rest of the team once again forced to watch in horror as their jungler gets dragged off. It's like a horror movie for the University of Utah. It's going to get scarier here as Ravamus Mori maybe going to hand over a pick here, but he has the healing available to him as the Riptide going to mean that a pick goes the way of the University of Utah. But the rest of the University of Washington are here to follow suit, and they try to find the kill onto Lovejoy, but a brilliantly timed stopwatch is going to keep himself alive just a little bit longer as the aftershock from Morona finds him, but gets a lot of time for the rest of the team to deal damage to Seago here. That's going to mean 2 kills for 1 for the University of Utah. 2 for 2, excuse me, as finally with his last breath, Seago was able to find that healing and get the kill onto the opposing support. Even when they think they have an opportunity, University of Utah just can't find it. And that means that there's 7,000 gold and a whole Mountain Soul behind at just 24 minutes into this game. University of Utah always playing on the back foot, and it seems like the hopes they had of winning out in the late game, once the items started to come through on Love Yue and on Fungal Pants, are diminishing fast. Finally, you can see one member of the University of Utah deciding to pay the tax and pick up the Quicksilver Sash to fight back against the oppressive stinger of Drago 8. But he's the only one who's got it so far in this series. Love Yue is going to have to pick one up for himself down the line. Lest Drago continue to absolutely wreak havoc on the battle lines of the University of Utah. And look at that, the Prowler's Claw is going to be the completion for the Renekton. He knows that the Skarner pick with the Thornmail and the Turbo Chem Tank is all the front line that the University of Washington composition needs, and that's going to mean that he's going to take the role of the absolutely pure damage threat on this Renekton pig. He's got lethality to his name, the Blade of the Ruined King. If he lands a empowered Ruthless Predator onto any opponent, that might practically one-shot them. Even someone as tanky as the Gragas, who has the Bramble Vest and the Turbo Chem Tank Ninja Tabi to boot. But imagine if he got his of Fungal Pants, who can hardly scrape together any kind of defensive opportunities. Only the Quicksilver Sash, and that's really spelling a lot of trouble for University of Utah, as it's really stunting the growth of their main damage threat so far. On the other hand, Aegon Rector, 3 full items completed to his name and a BF Sword to boot. As Fungal Pants can hardly find himself that Runon's Hurricane, that core item that he really needs to come online, and for that, University of Utah is forced to cede away so much in the face of the University of Utah. But now they're going to send out the Riptide and find at least a Body Slam onto Drago 8, but now the Devastating Charge is going to be used as a disengage tool, and University of Washington looking completely unfazed by what just happened to them, and the inhibitor going to be picked up regardless. University of Utah trying to find anything with their engage tools, but all amounting to nothing with how much sustain this Mountain Soul is able to provide to the blue team. And now with the inhibitor being picked up as well, the gold accumulating from this Baron power play is going to mean even more item completions coming through. Sonya's Hourglass now completed for the Silas, and suddenly even more tank stats on the Skarner. He's opting for that Force of Nature to provide himself even more run straight at your AD carry power, and just like last game, it seems like there's nothing University of Utah can do against it. No peel they can scrape together, even with the likes of the Gragas available to them, who's now picked up the Zonya's Hourglass. Not as much of a pure tank option as you might expect from the Gragas, who went straight for that Turbo Chem Tank, but still very powerful in its own right. That Stasis buying so much time for the rest of his team, but I don't think it's going to amount to much if it just means that the University of Washington can turn their attention to the other members of the Gragas' team, but it looks like University of Utah might be looking for something here as Love UA charging up that Rift Walk. Try to get as much damage as he can, but he doesn't have the Zhonya's Hourglass completed quite just yet, as Rain might be some trouble here, and there's the power of the Zhonya's Hourglass right there, as it's able to cancel the animation of that, of Drago 8's ultimate, cancel that suppression, force that cooldown not to go, or force that cooldown not to go on cooldown, but at least force a few of their efforts to be wasted as what? Pelios flashing into the rest of the enemy team! Make up for carries to take, but Love UA is going to get suppressed finally. The explosive cast only finding one member of the University of Washington, a complete disaster for the University of Utah. Aphelios trying to escape, but escaped into 5 members and just into the clutches of University of Washington, and now the Elder Dragon is going to walk into their clutches as well, as only one member of the University of Washington, a key shutdown going over in the form of Eigenrector, but at what cost? The most powerful buff in the game before the Elder Dragon going to go to the University of Washington in hopes of closing this game out quickly, as Seiko, one man bearing down the base of the opposing team, and Riton the only one there to stop him, as here's the Turbo Chem Tank from Rain joining the battle, and he gets the slow for the from the barrel, excuse me, but Devastating Charge not going to find so much, as Verona has the Lantern there, and finally the Elder Dragon picked up for the University of Washington. They've got a Soul, they've got an Elder Dragon, they don't need so much as a Baron, I can imagine. They're just going to walk straight at their opponents and finish this one out. No chance of fighting back for the University of Utah unless something big happens, and the University of Utah, that seems like they're really starting to fall apart here. That team fight looked so disarrayed. Every single member trying to dump everything they can into just finding the Kaisa, but there are so many more problems to worry about here, and that's the power of the itemization that Seiko's opt for and going for this lethality. Now he's suddenly a big damage threat that's going to get locked up for a moment by the Riptide, and now the rest of the University of Utah joining, but he goes in for the kill onto the Aphelios, and he goes up cast, saving his life. Look at that, Ruthless Predator empowered one shot onto the opposing AD carry, and even when he goes back in to try to find a return kill, or another kill, excuse me, onto Love UA, he finally gets shut down, but I think he would have almost found that casting with just a little bit more of a moment, and Prowler's Claw, Blade of the Ruined King, Blade of the Ruined King, and Black Cleaver to boot. Anyone who walks into the range of this Renekton is going to get melted, even before the Elder Dragon can get his roar off. And University of Washington, having seen such an impressive display and knowing that the opposing AD carry has fallen in the face of their top laner, are going to take away this Baron Nashor. 3 buffs to their name. Elder Dragon, Mountain Soul, Baron Nashor, you name it, they got it, and they are going for the Nexus next. That's going to be all they need to top off their list of accomplishments in this game, and University of Utah looking powerless to stop them. Every single member of the University of Washington position in absolute terror in their own right, and it's only getting worse as Eigenrector has finished the Infinity Edge for himself at just 30 minutes into this game, while Fungal Pants finally scraping together his second real item in form of the Runan's Hurricane. Kassadin might have himself 4 items as well, but he's got the level 16, but really what's that going to do in the face of the Elder Dragon, in the face of the Mountain Soul, in the face of how many stats, how much gold that University of Washington has to their name? 11,000 gold over their opponents. They're going to be practically slapping them with their wallets at this rate as the explosive cast just trying to clear out the wave as the Dreadline tries to find Drag away, but that's only going to give the green light to go in on the opposing support, and Achilles heel is going to go down without so much of the fight. And now the hook going on to the Gragas as well. The box tried to come through at the very last moment, but not even going to be necessary as the University of Washington going for this very last inhibitor take. They want out of this game now, and they're going to find it waiting just for their mid lane wave to show up so they can deal that extra damage to those turrets. And University of Utah, this is where they make their last stand. They hope they've got some potions to their name because they're going to hit. As now, here's the Turbo Chem Tank from Gragas trying to find something, but once again, the hook always finding its mark onto the Hecarim. The Body Flame trying to peel out for the jungler as the Moonlight Vigil finding the root onto 4 members of the University of Washington, but it's not going to mean so much as Love UA going to be hooked up once again. Love UA going to go down very low and able to walk away from Love Rift Walk, but he's going to get locked up by the fear with the stolen onslaught of shadows, and finally every single member of the University of Utah going to drop in turn. Achilles heel is off the respawn, is going to drop his Drago 8, walking it off with that 1 HP on his health bar and securing a beautiful victory for the University of Washington, 2-0 over their opponents, the Utes. in commanding fashion, and even if it isn't as clinical as you might hope, it was played so well and with such dominance by all members of the University of Washington all across the board. The lane setups, the plays early from Drago 8, those neutral objectives secured without a fight in the face of the University of Utah. Those beautiful engages at every single play from Morona, whether he's on the Thresh or whether he's on the Rel. You name it, he's got it. He's going to start the fight off in absolutely roaring fashion and really set the tide for the University of Washington to run over their opponents. Everyone showing up today, and University of Utah just really getting outclassed all across the board, whether it was the ball lane, whether it was the top lane, whether it was wherever University of Washington was focusing their efforts or not, they were always coming out on top. And even though they had a few hiccups, some team play that really needed a bit more tightening, they were always on top of it when it mattered, when it came to those neutral objectives, when it came to those straight on team fights. And because of that, they are emerging 2-0 victorious over the opponents, the University of Utah, and that is going to close out this best of 3 series tonight. Thank you all for joining us for these games, for this game of the week. Make sure to follow us here on our Twitch channel and all on our socials. You can follow us on Twitter, U_of_WA Esports, if you want to see some more action like this. My name is Kestra. I've been your voice tonight, and I'm going to be signing off. I'm going to be signing off for this game of the week, and I hope you'll join us next week for our next broadcast, and see you then.